The 25 basis point increase was just a signal, but certainly the change in the asymmetric corridor is actual tightening, because what it does is it moves interest payable on bank deposits with central bank from 1% to 3.25%. That's a 225 basis point increase. It also, the announcement also that will resume OMO signals that if there is need for actual tightening, then we'll do it. The major concern is that we should not have a sharp correction in yields, but there is need to address inflation. And the MPC wanted to make sure that the market understands that it is not taking its eye off the ball as far as inflation is concerned. And we're fortunate that we've reached where we've reached on the banking reforms, and therefore the risk to financial institutions that we saw 2 months ago, if we had tried to exit, is very much diminished, and the risk of inflation is actually heightened as we move towards the end of the year.
And let's talk about the rescued banks. Obviously, we know AMCON is hopefully will be in play in another few months, possibly. But in your view, based on what we know, with the Senate hopefully reconvening to consider the board that has been recommended, do you think we would see a deal this year?
Yeah. There's no reason why we won't have a deal. The Senate reconvenes on the 28th of September. Unfortunately, the party primaries for the PDP, I think, are first 2 weeks of October. If we can get the confirmation done in 2 days, that would be great. If we can't, in 2 weeks after the primaries, we'll go and do it. But we continue to engage with the Senate. I mean, look, I've told people on this, we've delivered on the legislation. We've delivered on getting the board to the Senate. We'll deliver on getting the board confirmed, and we're very much on course. And I've said repeatedly that a lot of the work on AMCON is being done by technical teams. We've had a team, Central Bank, Finance, SEC, NDIC, working for the last 2-3 months on NPLs, working on valuations, working on transactions. So it's not as if nothing is happening until you have a board.
All right, and let's talk a bit about the new banking licensing regime, which you've obviously introduced. Some feel that it might lead to a proliferation of banks, more so when you consider that the capital requirements for merchant banks, for example, has been reduced significantly. What will you say to this?
Well, the first thing is that a license is not automatic. So the issue of whether there's proliferation or not depends on whether the central bank issues the licenses. So we will issue licenses if we feel that there is a justifiable case, and if we feel that the market will benefit from a license. There is nothing that stops us from having a moratorium on licenses, even if people qualify. So I don't see how the principle itself is negated by the fact that it opens up a possibility, so long as we do have within our power the right to say no to license or to new licenses.
And coming back to the rescued bank, and we have read in the newspapers, for example, in particular FinBank, there are some reports about some shareholders being concerned about the transparency of the process to elect a buyer for that bank in particular. Do you have concerns about the level of transparency in the process of getting potential investors in these banks?
No, I don't. And let me explain what the process is. The process is very simple. You've had people who've expressed interest in these banks. These institutions have done their due diligence on these banks. They have submitted their bids. The bids are not coming to the central bank. They are going to the boards of directors, who still have non-executive members that are representatives of the shareholders that have lost their capital. All those banks have board committees. Those committees are looking at those bids, and those committees are going to come up with who their preferred partner is and who their reserve partner is. And now all we've done in the central bank is to look at the bids and look at the people, and to ensure that we have clear guidelines. For example, if it's a private equity firm, we've made it very clear that the advisors need to make sure that the PE firm has the capital to inject in the bank. You can't just say this is a preferred bidder without seeing evidence of ability to fund it. If it's a bank or another PE firm or whoever, the advisors have to make sure that they have the ability to manage the institution and to address the governance and risk management issues that led to the situation that we find ourselves in.
Last month when you were on CNBC, you did mention that you've received bids for 4 banks. Can you give us an update on bids you've received after that?
I suspect Actually, the critical thing is not even the bids that have been received, because there have been more. But I suspect the critical thing is to see how soon we can actually announce to the markets that 3 or 4 institutions have gone into a negotiation phase. And what we're doing is we're targeting end of September, latest first week or two in October, to come out with an announcement that Bank A, B, C, D are in negotiation with this and this party. And I think it's better to wait for that to happen. I haven't received the reports from the directors themselves. The banks are looking at these parties. They are going through the process of selection. And when they're ready, they will come with their recommendation, because remember, the deal will involve what they expect AMCON to do, what they expect the central bank and finance to do now or maybe going forward, any forbearances that they may want, and then what the financial terms are. So there are a number of interested parties in this, because it's a sponsored process. The banks have lost a lot of capital. Now, it's possible that the directors and the partners might agree on a deal on terms that impose a burden on finance, on central bank, that we are not willing to take. We don't know. Now, when all that comes into place, if we're okay to support the transaction on those terms, we'll say okay, and we'll say we don't have any objections, and we'll announce, and the bank will announce that they have started negotiating.
And finally, just to clarify again, like I mentioned, you did say 4 banks before. Have we received more than 4 banks?
Yes, I think so.
How many do we have now?
I don't want to read my lips. I believe we have 6.
6 banks right now. 6 additional or 6 in all?
For 6 in all.